You've entered Bookstorm with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Welcome back, readers and fiction lovers. You're going to be so excited to see who we have with us here today. We have Jamie Brenner. You will recognize this name by her best-selling book, Blush, and also the national bestseller, The Forever Summer. But we're here to talk to her today about a book that Kristen and I just adored, Gilt. People magazine calls Jamie's books a delightful escape wherever you are. Publishers Weekly says of her new novel, Gilt, this beach read sparkles like a diamond, and we couldn't agree more. Jamie grew up in the suburban Philadelphia on a steady diet of Jackie Collins and Judith Krantz novels. Yes, we've been there, done that. After studying literature at the George Washington University, she moved to New York City to work at HarperCollins, Barnes & Noble, and Vogue. That's quite an array of experience. I'd love to hear more about that before she became an author. Today, she spends her summers visiting the beach towns that inspire her novels. And I want to quote a couple of our favorite authors who've also been guests here on Bookstorm. Fiona Davis says, I completely lost myself in Brenner's blissful, heartfelt novel, centered around a family curse and a luscious pink diamond. A joyous story about shifting family dynamics, self-discovery, and the power of forgiveness. And Viola Shipman, another friend and guest of Bookstorm, says, a summer sparkler about diamonds, revenge, family heirlooms, but at its heart, the one thing we all desire most, love. So true. Jamie, thank you so much for being our guest here today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you ladies.
Now, Jamie, we'd like to give a little bit of the background of your story. So if you'll indulge me, I'd just like to talk about some of the background, but I won't give away any spoilers. And if you want to add anything at the end, you are free to do so, of course. The Pavlin family built a jewelry dynasty on the idea of love. They sold us on the idea that nothing says love like a diamond, and engagements have never been the same since. This immersive story follows three of the modern-day women of the Pavlin family, and we follow them from Manhattan's swanky Fifth Avenue all the way to Provincetown, Rhode Island. And really, this is a place where they are forced to come to terms with the past, especially if they have any hope of finding happiness themselves. In the story, long ago, there was an ill-fated publicity stunt that pitted three of the Pavlin sisters against one another. And over a decade later, a family member is coming to terms with what has happened. She is a budding designer, but she has designs on a diamond that is centered in the story because she believes it is rightfully hers. So she is coming back for that diamond, but she is coming back for everything else as well. This story had us on the edge of our seats. It was immersive and beautiful and so enjoyable. Did you want to add anything?
Thank you. No, I want to take you with me everywhere so you can do my story intro. Thank you.
Of course. Well, Jamie, Chris, if you're ready to brave the storm, we're ready to dive in.
We are ready. So I have to start just by, I want our listeners to know this is a book that you're going to love. Jamie, your beautiful, heartfelt story showed the reader how easily parents can leave a legacy of competition and unforgiveness. Sometimes because of the parents' own focus on their own selfish desires and goals rather than their children's futures. And I wondered, you as the writer, what characteristics did it require for Gemma, our protagonist here? or even for Elodie and Celeste, her sisters, to abandon the burden placed upon them by their mother, and how did they were able to gain the freedom to learn how to live and be happy again?
I think why we love fiction, assuming we all are on the same boat with that, is when we read a book, usually in the book, the characters that are at a place in their lives where continuing with the status quo is just no longer a choice. So at the beginning of Gilt, if you asked any of these women, Gemma, Elodie, Celeste, what are you going to do to make things, to change yourself, to make things better? They would all swear, I'm fine. It's everyone else that's the problem. And over the course of the book, they are forced to reckon with the fact that it's their own emotional blocks that are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of unhappiness. So it's their assumptions as they face life, both the day-to-day small things, running a business, having a relationship, getting engaged, and also the macro attitude towards life, that is really creating their own problems, even though they can logically blame it on their family members. And each of these sisters and the granddaughter blame a different family member for their problems. And they're totally right to blame them for certain things. But ultimately, that's not how you fix your problems, right? Like, you have to do something to change. So the big picture change that has to take place for each of these characters, for Gemma, who's the youngest, and just starting out in life in her 20s, her challenge is letting go of anger towards this family that appeared to have pushed her aside for no reason, anger at having lost her mother, anger at having to live her life without mother love. And so the idea of this perfect diamond becomes the substitute for what we all really need, as you mentioned, love. And for her aunts, who are the previous generation in this diamond family, we have Elodie, who's filled with resentment because she always felt like she had to prove herself. She was always second best. She wasn't the beautiful one. She wasn't the smart one. She was just the one who worked the hardest. And this chip on her shoulder, kind of painted her into an emotional corner as an adult. And then Celeste, she's grappling with a lot of guilt. And when we have guilt, what do? We run. We run from what it is that makes us feel guilty. So she has self-estranged herself from the family. And she's also estranged herself from the notion of being worthy of romantic happiness. So these are sort of the self-imposed emotional prisons our characters find themselves in at the beginning of the book. And over the course of the story, they have to fight their way out in order to have the happiness that's eluded them.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I loved each of these three characters. And for the readers, we see ourselves in every one of these characters in some small amount, because we all deal with these issues in real life. And so watching them, as you said, stop blaming everyone else and have the courage or dare to look within yourself and think, how may I be able to change, or what may I be able to do differently, was sort of eye-opening for all of us. And my second part to this question, there was some forced reconciliation in this story. And I thought as I read this that it sort of opened the way to healing, this ability to maybe not make amends and befriend someone from your past, but to be able to have some sort of a communicative relationship with that person. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but how do you feel about that? You did have a little reconciliation. Do you feel that that was important in your character growth or in their self-discovery?
Absolutely. I think that's important for us as, real life human beings. Forgiveness for the sake of moving forward doesn't mean you're absolving them of all wrongdoing. It doesn't mean that you're changing your mind about what was wrong. It doesn't mean that you weren't wronged. It means, how much is it worth to hold on to this versus how much more do I gain by letting go a little? And that's a really, really challenging moment in everyone's lives. And big or small, we've all had those moments where holding on to what's hurt us is actually hurting us more than the initial wound. And that is the situation that I'm exploring with all of these characters in different ways.
Mhm. And that's just words of wisdom that you said right there. And Kristen and I were talking about this before the show because we're also believers in that forgiveness is actually a release. It's not what you did was right, but it's a release. I'm not going to carry it anymore. And
Yes.
so this is just a great book. Readers, this book has a lot of really very deep and important life lessons I felt in it. Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, as you were both talking, I was thinking about the role that parents play in typing their children. This is the smart one, the athletic one. This is the business-minded one. This is the beautiful or pretty one. And I think as parents and even sometimes as the siblings, we need to check that because you talked about that self-fulfilling prophecy, and I think that's really something that could place a big obstacle in your life as you grow.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's an oddly natural instinct to self-sort ourselves in this way. Even, I have two daughters, and I was very aware of not doing that to them. And yet I would see them doing it to each other, well, to themselves, actually, in relation to one another. Oh, this one's the smart one. I'm the funny one. I don't know why we have this impulse to do it, but I think it's really destructive. And I think, we can't blame our parents for everything. Some of it's larger society that comes filtered down to us through our parents as a messenger. But ultimately, we are responsible for saying, no, like, you don't tell me who I am. I'm going to tell you who I am. And that takes maturity, and it takes, suffering sometimes or making some mistakes. But at the end of the day, it is our job to define ourselves, and we can only blame other people for so long. So that is something, Elodie and Celeste are middle-aged women at this point and still holding on to, yes, things their parents did wrong, things that were said, things that were done. But at a certain point, the parents are long gone, and here you are in your life. So what are you going to do today to change your circumstance or change the way you feel? Because no one can do that for you. And that is a very, very scary reckoning. And the characters in the book just keep looking to outside sources for answers. Like Celeste is obsessed with astrology, and she's looking to the stars to tell her what to do and when to do it, because that is so much easier than looking carefully at what's working in your life and what, we know what's going on. If we look carefully at what's making us happy and what's making us sad, we can read our own tea leaves, but that's a scary thing to do. So in a novel and in Gilt, what's really fun as a writer and a reader is you take people and you make it impossible for them to continue looking away. The circumstances put so much pressure on them that those coping mechanisms begin to fail. And that's where a novel and where a story and where life gets really juicy. And I think, that's where the action gets started in Gilt.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. In fact, I'd like to pick up on that theme because some of the characters in your story believe in love, but they don't believe in a happy ending. They don't believe they deserve it, that it'll ever happen for them. And, that is a distorted belief. And a lot of times we have those distorted beliefs and then act accordingly, like you're talking about. And I was wondering if you think this is something that your characters and even us generally have to almost have a mindset change to overcome. How do you move past those obstacles?
It's a challenge. I think it's a universal challenge. I talk sometimes about things, and I have a friend who says to me, this is a problem, but this is just the weather. It's not the climate. And when we get emotional about something, it's very easy. We want to make sense of it. So if something is this way today, it'll always be this way. And it's easier just to accept that than to dare to hope or try otherwise. And I think so much of what we do is out of fear. So much of what these characters did was out of fear. When we're injured, all we want to do is prevent that from ever happening again. So Gemma is obsessed with finding this object, this pink diamond that she believes is her birthright, because it's so much easier to focus on a diamond that you want than you focus on the mother who died that you will never have. And so rather than reckon with that, it's like you can become obsessive about a physical quest that at least you can, you feel like you're doing something, even if it's the wrong thing. And Elodie was burned by love. So it's easier just to say, I'll focus on work because I can control that. Obviously love just isn't in the cards for me. And I think we all do that in little ways. And like you said, it becomes our own self-fulfilling problems and limitations, even though we'd swear it was because of outside forces that put us in this situation.
Absolutely. And I loved in your story, I felt there was you were sort of showing us through these characters to be careful what we say to ourselves, not even just what our parents say, but what do we say to ourselves? Oh, I'm never going to find love. Oh, I'm not talented like she is. Oh, I'm not as smart. And we feed these words to ourselves sometimes, and we begin to believe them when we should be speaking beautiful truths about ourselves. Yes, I can do it. Yeah, I am strong enough. Yes, I do have gifts and talents that are unique to just myself. And I saw a huge character growth in each of these characters as they slowly came around and were willing to admit that they were deserving of something good in life. It was just a beautiful story that you told there.
Thank you. Well, I liked using jewelry sort of as the mechanism for this topic because I think engagement rings are a perfect flaw in it's a perfectly effective flaw in marketing love, right? So De Beers came up with the slogan, "A diamond is forever," and thus began the most successful marketing campaign in American advertising history, because until then, diamonds were not intrinsic to the engagement process. So then it wasn't just, oh, I need a diamond ring, but how big is a diamond ring? And how big the diamond is expresses how much he loves you or how worthy he is. And it's really, really irrational, right? And so in Gilt, I take "a diamond is forever" and I turn it into the slogan, "a diamond is love," which is what the Pavlin family used as their slogan. And it's really easy to lose sight of what's important when the outside world is telling you values for their own selfish purposes that could, if you internalize them, undermine what's real in your own life or what really matters. I was really interested in doing research to learn that the whole thing we accept as the 4 C's of diamonds, color, cut, clarity, whatever the fourth one is, was completely made up just so that people who had small diamonds could say, oh, well, at least mine has perfect clarity. And we've accepted that. And so not only we judgmental and perfectionist about ourselves, become judgmental and perfectionist about these tokens of love. And that's just an example of like how our thinking gets so distorted.
We've both found that fascinating because I had no idea that diamonds were not always given as far back as people could remember in civilized society as an engagement token until I read it in your book. And I said, this is interesting. This is a whole marketing campaign by some jeweler, but it's taken off and I don't see it going anywhere. It's kind of taken off in a crazy way. That leads into my next question a little bit. Your story also showed us the inherent danger of placing any object or possession over the worth of a human being. So Gemma placed such value on finding that exquisite diamond ring, she became obsessed with it. But all the while, you slowly revealed to the reader, as you just touched upon, that it wasn't really the diamond she was after, but what it symbolized. So I was going to ask you, what characteristic or what do you think it was about Emma and maybe all of us in the real world that allows us to release those things that we hang on to, those physical or wealth or objects that we crave or dream and think they're going to bring us happiness? For some of us, it's too late. We spend our whole life trying to achieve this one thing, and then we find out we weren't happy. Luckily for Gemma in the story, she discovered it soon enough to realize she could live without it. What was it about her that you think allowed her to transition?
I think it's important, and this is something I tell my daughters, it's important to have something internally that you want, that you're striving for, that isn't just something that someone else can give you. And that because Gemma had her own dreams, she wants to be an artist and a creator and have her own business. So yes, while she was frustrated in not getting the object, she had her own internal engine moving her forward in life. And I think when we lose touch with our internal engine, what's driving us forward, regardless of what's happening externally, that's when we get into a lot of trouble. And so, if you think about work, yes, we work to make money, but it's also important to have something you do that gives you fulfillment and happiness. So if you have a job that, pays your rent, but isn't fulfilling, it's great if you can also knit on the weekends and just feed yourself in that way. And when you have neither, that's when you start putting way too much emphasis on material external things as a substitute. And it's just a universal trap, especially in our culture, that we fall into. For women, it might be as simple as thinking, oh, if I was just pretty enough, all these other things would fall into place. When in reality, if you put some other things in place, it really wouldn't matter how pretty you are or not. You know what I'm saying? And it took me a lot of time in life to correct these thought, these are like they're like thought ticks that aren't true. And society does us no favors in instilling us with these erroneous ways of patterns of thinking. That's why I think books are so important. We can explore this through fictional characters in a way that's fun and still, set in a beach town and still has a little romance and pretty jewelry, but still tackle the things that I think we're all dealing with from the time we're young until we're fully realized adults, which we're never done growing, right? But I think we make some progress, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful answer. That's brilliance in the story. I just love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of want to go a little deeper on that as well. This theme of treasure runs through your story. In fact, you use the word a few times in different contexts. For example, the father, the patriarch of the family, called his daughters his greatest treasure. Some of the characters enjoy treasure hunting, which I thought was very interesting, kind of a play on that. And I was wondering if you were trying to really focus on the different things that we value and how we determine that that's treasure. And going forward, as we choose a mate in life, as we choose friends, how do we assess what people treasure? What are some of the giveaways?
Well, I think that goes back to the old saying, actions speak louder than words. I think people do show you who they are. And I mean, even jewelry is the way we tell our story to the world. So I'm really drawn when people are wearing, estate pieces or heirlooms. Like, why do you wear that random, horseshoe around your neck? Oh, it was my sister's or my grandmother's, and it means something to me. And that, to me, conveys so much more than someone who's wearing like a really expensive Bulgari necklace. Like, I see that you can afford that necklace, but it's not telling me anything about you, your values, that you love and have been loved. You know what I'm saying? So I think people say a lot in small ways. And I think that's why also even like proposal videos on Instagram have become almost more important than the ring, because they're showing, I know who this person is, and I'm catering this experience to show that I understand them, not just, oh, I put this much amount of my salary into this rock from the ground. So I think in an odd way, people are catching on to what is meaningful and how to show that you understand someone and what's important to them.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, I have a ring that I wear that has leaves on it, and it's important to me. I wear it all the time, and believe me, it was probably $10. And it's something that reflects that I'm an environmentalist. That's what I do.
Yes.
By day, I'm an environmental attorney. But if you look at my rings, you would learn a lot about me, because I want that part of me to be known. So I think what an interesting comment.
It reminds me a little bit, I'm going to go so far as almost like why people choose certain tattoos. You can have anything you want, but you're choosing something that's meaningful,
Yeah.
that maybe something in your family or a lost loved one. And I love this about your Gemma character. I loved all of your writing about how she was creating this jewelry from antiquities and just shopping in what's the word I'm looking for, used clothing stores
Yeah,
and
estate sales.
yeah, estate sales, and finding
Yeah.
these little unusual treasures, then dissecting them. This isn't giving out any spoilers because it's a
No.
beautiful part of the story. Dissecting the little pieces and weaving it into something, and then she would say, this could be for someone where this is important to them. And that, you're onto something there. Maybe you need to start a jewelry design business because you're onto
Well,
something.
Rock candy.
This exists. It's the designer, it's the brand Lulu Frost. And
Okay.
she is the one who really I encountered her work in a boutique in Sag Harbor called Matriarch. And there were all these big letter charms like this on a table, like very big letters and numbers. And the owner of the store said to me, oh, that's Lulu Frost. That's her Plaza collection. When the Plaza Hotel in New York City, the iconic hotel, was being dismantled for renovation like 15, 20 years ago, Lulu Frost went there and collected all of the fixtures that marked the guest rooms, the ballrooms, the dining rooms, and turned them into necklace charms. So, and I was like, this is brilliant because you could get your initial, which is personal, but it's also a little piece of New York City history.
Yep.
And she has so much meaningful, she scours the world for these pieces that have meaning for someone. Like I bought a New York City subway token, and New York City doesn't use subway tokens anymore. It's Metro cards. But I moved to New York in my 20s when there were still physical tokens. So I loved that. I saw it in her showroom and I bought it and I wear it on a necklace. So this does exist. And Lulu Frost is the one who gave me the idea of, jewelry being personally meaningful, not just aesthetically beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's very cool what she's doing there. Very cool. We'll have to look her up.
Yes.
So tell us, Jamie, we love this book. Readers, you definitely want to dive down deep into this book. What are you working on now? What's on your radar? Can you give us any glimpses?
Sure. I'm working on a book for next summer, hopefully, about a woman she built a perfume empire. She created this iconic scent, kind of like Chanel No. 5. It's the beginning of summer, and her grown daughter shows up with someone who has a link to this woman's past. And it upsets her so much that she loses her sense of smell, which is essentially the way she even, deals with life. And what she does once she realizes she's lost her sense of smell. So I'm working on it now.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it already, don't you?
Sounds awesome.
Wonderful. So readers, pick this book up, Gilt by Jamie Brenner, and you're going to want to connect with her. You can find her on social media. She's on Facebook and Instagram. And thank you, Jamie. It's absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much. My pleasure as well.
Yes, I love talking to Jamie Brenner, and there were so many life issues in here. And did something come out hitting you strongly, Kristen?
Yeah, I was really thinking about this idea of stereotyping our children. And I hear this all the time. I've seen many examples of this in families where kids grow up believing, well, I was the smart one. So they don't feel like they could also be the pretty one or the athletic one. And they kind of self-sort into a different direction than their siblings because they are distinguished for that, maybe originally by parents or even by people in the community. And I was thinking about an example of this. My grandmother back in the 80s was very into the type of colors. You're a winter, you're a spring, you're a summer. And that became ingrained in me, and I only wore colors that a winter would wear because that's what I thought would look good on me, whatever. And I remember a few years ago breaking out and wearing something that was not a winter color. And I was like, I love this color. I'm going to buy much more of this color. But look at how that thinking dominated me for so long. And I looked at my closet and I was like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm. And limited you. Verbal words are very important and can be either very inspiring or very damaging.
Yeah.
Words are important, and you can't take them back after they've been spoken. And for a child, you may replay those in your mind even subconsciously throughout the rest of your life.
Yes.
But that's good advice. The thing that hit me strong is this, I believe it's somewhat of an epidemic today, because every family that I know has this happening in some, either directly or remotely, that family members begin to feud and decide they're never speaking to each other ever again. And they're not going to have anything to do with each other ever again. And their children are not going to talk to their other children. And the whole thing blows up into way bigger than life. I don't have any judgment or opinion on this other than what I read in Gilt, that I feel that reconciliation could be healing in a lot of different ways. Maybe you're not going to get the I'm sorry apology that you longed for. Maybe you're not going to even be able to reconcile your differences, but the freedom to release that stronghold of unforgiveness and anger is really freeing. And I feel that she showed us that in her book. I think watching these family members in my extended family and some of my cousins, and I've got it everywhere, and friends, I feel that when you hold on to this, you're hurting yourself more than you're hurting the other person. The other person doesn't care that you're still mad at them and that you're carrying this around, this anger.
Yes.
You're only hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And I just thought this was interesting, I think reconciliation, and I'm talking about situations that are not physically or emotionally abusive here. I'm not telling anyone to return to an abusive situation. I'm just talking about family feuds. Reconciliation could really benefit you. It could be healing for you. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree. In fact, I think it is an epidemic, because I can look at 10 families I know right now where, children are not speaking to their parents, adult children, or siblings are not speaking to one another. And it is very heartbreaking. And I understand the concept of wanting to choose who you allow into your life, because there is a lot of damage that comes from family members sometimes. But at the same time, there is an impact on you and the next generation. Our children pick up on that animosity. And it takes up a lot of energy and a lot of mental energy to perpetuate that. So I agree with you. At some point, we just got to come to terms with one another and be accepting of one another and reinstate that healthy respect we have, even simply because we are family.
Maybe so. I agree with that. I don't know what it is, but it just seems like this is, and I'm a very big believer in boundaries. I really am.
Yeah.
But I think boundaries come in all different shapes and sizes. And maybe we put too strict of a boundary upon ourselves, and we need to sort of introspectively look at our situation and say, maybe this would benefit me to let down a little guard and allow them some entrance into my life, if not fully. Just throwing that out there, just something that hit me and I wondered about. I don't have a black and white answer to this, but the book really made me think deeper on it.
Oh, yeah.
So readers, we're so happy that you joined us today. Please, just want to give a little shout out to our incredibly talented sound engineer, as always, the Mr. Mark Carey. So grateful for him.
Hope you all enjoyed the show today and the interview, and stay tuned next week with us.
Thanks, Mark. We certainly did. And guess who we have for the rest of our summer and fall lineup? And we are getting booked, but we're just reading like crazy. And we've got publicists and publishers sending us books and ARCs in the mail. And we love you all. Here's who we've got coming up. Ellen Marie Wiseman, The Lost Girls of Willowbrook. Girl Forgotten by Karen Slaughter. Madeline Martin, The Librarian Spy. And until next week.
Yes, come back with us, because we want you to stay on the radar with Chris and me by visiting our website at bookstormpodcast.com. Visit us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and if you'd like to see us in person, or better yet, one of our authors, come see us on YouTube. Until next time, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep with life-changing fiction.